Hailing back from the days of Medarot DS back in 2010 is everyone's favorite 6-armed boss type. It is ASR00 Spenag-Menog with a kit of Deathlock, Fire, Napalm, Float Legs, and the leg ability of Shura, which buffs power when a part is broken upon being attacked. Now, Spenag has been in the game for a pretty fair amount of time, I'd say relatively early on from the game's first initial launch back in 2020, but all the same, even with all the current meta, with meta change and high-end with Rebirth and such that has been going around, Spenag still makes its stance in the meta very clear to the point that it's not going to give up its place or its viability without a fight. Deathlock, of course, is probably one of the best ailments in the game, as what it grants is no defend and no evade to the enemy in question, and also debuffs their heat and cool stats by 25%, which means that not only is every hit towards this particular target guaranteed to land and guaranteed to be a critical hit, but it's also guaranteed to slow the target down, which buys you even just a few more seconds of time to outrun the target before they have a chance to nuke you in revenge before you can take them out. Fire is a standard ailment-based skill that upon attacking a target will infect them with a DOT, or damage over time effect, which will very slowly whittle their HP over time, making them easier to kill in the long run. Once it does its work for a certain amount of time as the fight does go on. Napalm is a gunpowder-based skill that is also a scattered AoE, meaning it will damage one part regularly at normal damage, and then two others at random at 1/3 of your damage. Now, between Fire and Napalm, it honestly is pretty well balanced between the two, as you can let the opponent just kind of burn themselves out for a little bit, and then use Napalm to kind of really finish them off with a very solid multi-break in this case, once the HP is low enough at that point. But then also pair Deathlock in the mix, where every hit is guaranteed to land. It means that you are guaranteed to land that DOT on them, and the gunpowder is guaranteed to land and deal the most damage possible when damaging the target. And then of course add Float Legs on top of that, means that Spenag is also going to have one of the best overall terrain coverage at A rank on every terrain. And in addition to this, Spenag is also very tanky, very mobile with a mobility in the 900s, and honestly with an evade closer to that of Flight Legs, but also with the shoot and melee resist more akin to a tank leg, which makes Spenag an all-round dangerous threat on the field if it's someone that you do not pay attention to or even underestimate. That being said, I do have to rate Spenag at a pretty solid 8 out of 10 for a pure set score for what it can offer, even though at first glance Fire and Napalm may not be the greatest skills to make use of or capitalize on. It's the Deathlock and the fact that it has a fast float leg that's good on all terrains that does easily forgive this. That being said, as mixed parts in their hand, I do have to rate Spenag just a little higher at a 9 out of 10. Now, even though Fire and Napalm may not be the most used parts, even though they still do have their viability, Deathlock and the Float Leg is where it's at, especially given the fact that Spenag is also a gender N type bot, meaning that you can use the parts on male or female tin pets in the case that in, say, a weekly PvP or an EX trial where male or female bots might be prohibited. This is a good way to kind of skirt that and still make use of a lot of very potentially dangerous parts, and still capitalize on that high damage that Deathlock might deal, or even the peppered damage between Fire and Napalm, or even at the very least, a fast float leg with resistance stats akin to that of a tank leg.